Hey guys, welcome to class 3. I hope you guys had a lot of fun illustrating in class 2 and creating your pine or palm tree outdoor scene. We had a lot of fun when we did that live. But today we're going to be building on that and showing you a really cool feature which is called masking. And you know, it might take you a little bit of time. This for me was the hardest part of learning Photoshop and kind of wrapping my head around how to use it. Once you do, it's extremely powerful and it's a great tool. But if you have to watch this video twice, like don't feel discouraged. This can be challenging, but maybe you'll get it. So let's jump into it. You can see I have a new document open, and I just want to show you a couple of things that we're going to do working with layers in the layer pane that will help you and we'll use moving forward. So let's just draw a shape. I'm going to draw a circle in the middle there, and I have it set to white, so change the color here too. Let's get a nice green. Alright, move that in the center. So I'm going to set my foreground color, so I draw this again. Alright, so we got a green circle, and if you want to select just that layer, the contents of that layer, you hold Command and you'll see you get this little dotted line, dashed line around the pointer on the thumbnail, and you click on the thumbnail and you can see now on the canvas my circle is selected. So just Command click on the thumbnail and you'll select the outline of all the content on that layer. Alright, and to deselect that, or to deselect any selection you have, and a selection is anytime you see this moving dashed line, that's a selection on the canvas. Just hit Command+D and you'll see it goes away and nothing's selected. Alright, so that's selecting from a layer. And the last thing I want to show you in the layers is duplicating a layer by holding down Alt and dragging the layer, and it'll make a copy. And you can do the same thing in the canvas, clicking on the layer, holding down Alt and moving it, and then you can hold Shift to constrain it. And there you go. So works the same in the canvas as it does in the layers. Great. Okay, so that's a little extra with the layers, and now I'm going to talk about the brush tool. The brush tool is a lot of fun, and if you want to do painting or any kind of touch-ups, you have a tendency to use the brush tool a lot. It is a raster brush, so it will paint the individual pixels, and you do need a new layer, or you can paint directly on the background, but generally when you paint on the background, you know, you've already got a background color, so you can't see anything underneath it. So it's a good idea to create a new layer. And when you paint, you can see I'm going to paint in the foreground color, and it paints. Okay, so that's a really rough, not that interesting paint. So I'm going to undo that. So what you can do is right click or control click if you're on a laptop, and you get these options here. So you can set the size, you can see it's smaller, or you can set the hardness, and the hardness is here, I'll demonstrate. So 100% hard is what we had, and when I draw, you can see the edges are really hard. And if I turn down the hardness, and you can see the brush down here of all the presets, I selected one that fades out a lot from the center to the edges, and now when I paint, it's really fuzzy. So that you know, there's lots of other presets in this pane. You can do kind of, and you'll see like different kinds of brushes, and you know, set all sorts of different features for different brushes, and play around with it. And there's a lot more tools here. So if you do get into painting, and I'll cover some of the other ways you can do this, but for now this is what we need. You know, just kind of a basic understanding of how to use the brush tool, because we'll be using that in a little bit when we get into layer masks. Alright, so I'm going to delete that brush layer and stick with this ellipse layer, this circle we've drawn. So before we get into masks, let me kind of explain the basics. So you can think of a mask as, say we have this photograph on the top layer, and we want that layer to be cut out with a circle that we have underneath it. You can think about taking that photo and putting it down on that circle, and then only where that circle exists are we going to show the photograph up top. So that's kind of the idea, is like cutting out one layer with another layer that modifies it. So I'm going to pull in a photo that I have of Omar from the LA Galaxy. So I should drag this into Photoshop, and when it opens, you just use the move tool, which is V, drag it up to the top here into the other tab of the working canvas we had, and then back down and let go, and it will drop him and the photo into the canvas. So we want to take this photo of Omar and then cut it out on this bottom photo of the circle that we've drawn, the green circle. So to do that, we just hover in between these two layers, hold down Alt, and you'll see that the cursor changes, and then click, and we've created a layer mask. And if we want to undo that, it's the exact same thing, Alt, and click in between them. Really simple. And the great thing is that we can adjust both of these layers independently and move them around. So I can nudge Omar down a bit so that we kind of see his actual face, and I can move up and down the circle. All right, now the other great thing is that you can add more layers onto this base clipping layer to be clipped by it. So if I wanted to add a square there and change that to a deep blue, and then I just again hold Alt in between the layers and click, and you can see it gets clipped by the base green circle. So I can, change the opacity here so it looks a little nicer, and there you go. And so the base layer here, this green circle that we drew, you won't see it because it's covered by the photo, but if we move the photo, I'm going to turn on auto select here so I can select this photo, you'll see it does show up if there's nothing to cover it. Alright, and this base layer doesn't need to be a shape, it can be any layer. So we can type out Omar's name, and I'm going to go to character pane and change this to red just so we can see it. Command T, make it a little bigger. Alright, move it up here. So I'm going to duplicate this photo of Omar by holding Alt and dragging down. So we can see we have a new photo of Omar. I'm going to move it over here. I'm actually going to hide this clipping mask so we can see what we're doing. And if you hide the base clipping layer, it'll hide everything above it. So there you go, that all goes away. Alright, and then again, Alt between the layers, click down, and you can see the photo gets clipped on the text Omar. Really cool. So that's clipping masks. A lot you can do with them. The next type of masking I'd like to talk to you about is called a layer mask. And a layer mask is basically another layer on that layer that modifies it, and it's a grayscale layer, and anything that's completely black means that layer will not show up, and anything that's white means that layer will completely show up, and any gray will show it 50% or whatever gray that is from the gradient from black to white. So let me show you one way to create it, and then we'll show another way. So the easiest way, and I'm going to undo by alt clicking in between these two layers, and I'm going to delete this Omar text, and let's move this guy down a little bit. So the easiest way is just to go down here at the bottom, and there's an add layer mask button right here. You just click that, and you can see a new white layer has been added onto this layer, and we see everything because this layer is completely white. But if we're to draw some black onto it, it'll start to take away parts of this photo. So hit B to go to the brush tool, And you can see that my swatches are set to white as the foreground, so I'm going to switch it to black so I can draw some black in here. And I'm just going to start drawing. And you can see my brush, the opacity up here in the top bar is set to 50%, so I'm actually drawing gray down. But if I bump this up to 100%, there we go, we're going to start taking away some of the actual photo. So that's one way, and you can also add a section of this that's taken away by doing an actual selection. So if you remember, we talked about holding Command and clicking on the thumbnail. So I'm going to click on the thumbnail of this green circle, and this green circle is going to be selected. And now we can paint only within this. So I can paint and this goes away. I'm going to undo that. Or like we talked about in the first class, you can hold Command Delete to fill it with the background color. So right now the background color is white, so if I hit Command Delete, nothing's going to happen. But if I switch these colors to black as the background, and I hold Command Delete, it'll take that away from what's visible of the photo. Alright, so that's one way to create a layer mask. The other way, if you want to start with a shape, is so I'm going to duplicate this so we can demonstrate this, and I'm going to right click on the mask and select Delete Layer Mask, and I'm going to hide this guy. Alright, so if we want to start with a selection, we Command click on the thumbnail of the green circle, and then click on the layer that we want to apply the mask to, and we'll hit the same button, but it will apply the mask so that only what we have selected is showing. So add layer mask, and bam, there we have a cutout on the circle. Alright, so that's layer masks. So now we're going to talk about vector masks. And vector masks are very similar, except they're not grayscale. They're either showing or not. Similar to clipping when you have a solid shape. So the easiest way, and I'm going to duplicate alt+drag this guy again, and right click, delete layer mask, and hide this guy above it. The easiest way is to take a shape, and it needs to be a shape, and hovering over the thumbnail, you hold down Alt and Command at the same time, and you'll see you get a little dashed line around your cursor, and just drag it, and you'll get the ghosting of that actual shape within the canvas kind of preview down to the layer you want to be masked, and let go, and it applies it. And you can see we now have a vector, and this vector still has the information of the points, so we can go in, hit A, and select the points with the direct selection tool. We can go to the pen tool like we did last class, and hold Alt and make these sharp points, and modify it and make all sorts of interesting shapes. So if you had a logo that you want to apply a picture over or anything like that, you could do some fun stuff and modify it with a vector mask. So that's the 3 types of masking we're going to talk about, and I think if you're having a little trouble, no problem, but I just want to stress how great this is as a tool, because if you come back to a design or you're working on something that you started with and you've used a mask as opposed to just deleting everything that you didn't want to see, you still have all the information of that photo. You can see this thumbnail here, it still has the full photo and then the mask on top of it, as opposed to just having this cutout of this shape. So if I wanted to go back and actually move this a little bit, or I wanted to adjust the size, like say I wanted to show more of it, if I had cut out the rest of it, there wouldn't be anything else to show. So this is what's called non-destructive workflow in Photoshop, and it's just really powerful for allowing you to work fast and quickly and go back and change things, and everything's still modifiable and all the information's still there. So that kind of concludes what we're going to cover today. I just want to do a short recap of the shortcuts that we talked about today. So I'm going to create a new layer here and move it to the top, and I'm going to hit B for the brush tool. That was the first shortcut we talked about. The second shortcut we talked about was duplicating a layer by holding Alt and dragging the layer down. Lastly, we talked about, not lastly, but third, we talked about Command clicking on any layer to select that layer. You can see the layer is now selected here. And we talked about alt-command dragging a vector. So this green circle we have drawn here, or even this blue square, we can alt drag that up onto another layer and it will be clipped. Now we have two of these, you can't really see it, but you can see, and I'll command click on this vector and it will also select it. You can see we just get a little bit of this green that we brushed in on this vector mask that we just created. Alright, so this class project, we're going to be pick your favorite sports figure or any notable character and build out a mini profile, some stats about that person along with their picture, and any other things you want to add to it in some kind of design. And think of it like the back of a baseball card. So just kind of working with the topography that we learned in class 1, and now with clipping out the photo, and maybe you can draw some shapes behind the photo or something like that to add something from class 2 in the drawing. Cool, looking forward to seeing what you build, and as always, if you have any questions or unclear about anything, leave a comment. I'll be happy to answer them, and happy photoshopping. Alright, until next time, bye.